getting to Ghana, insights. First of all, I mean, I think it started in the airport. Like literally getting off the plane and walking through the airport, and you saw mostly black folks. It was just like, I mean, I've never been in an experience where I've been that much in the majority in the community. I mean, you know, growing up, I was in a black community, but I mean, there was always other folks around. But when I got in the airport there, I was just like, wow, like this is what it feels like. Like all the advertisements, the billboards as you were walking around, they were all black people. And I'm like, I've never had that experience before.
Well, I think one of the things that impressed me right away was the spirit of the people. And I mean, just seeing that sparkle in their eyes, the smile, feeling the love. I mean, true love, like I had left my family and went away to jail or to war or wherever and returned and felt that level of comfortness, almost, and in some cases more than seeing family members here that I haven't seen in a while.
Accra for me, which is the capital, which is where we came in, is a Kwaba, which means welcome. And one of the things that happened throughout our trip is brothers and sisters from Ghana welcoming us as brothers and sisters. And one of the mantras that was consistent was welcome home. Welcome home, which was really important. And for me, and I've seen many parts of the African continent, but the one thing about Ghana for me is that it was so clear that a large percentage of Africans that live in America were stolen from Ghana.
And you asked about one of the most profound things for me was when it was two things. First is when we flew over and I'm flying in and I'm like, there are buildings and houses and I'm understanding because the images that we've been shown our whole life on TV is like always there's some forest, Tarzan and some more things. And I was like, man, this is, people tell you, but seeing is believing to a certain extent. And that, to see everything in 3D, to see it like, you know, it's like, okay, this is, you know, this is real.
Well, I'll say that my impression of Africa was elevated after we got there because, like many people, I had been brainwashed by the Tarzan and other movies about Africa, thinking that the quality of life was a lot less than it is. And so when I was there, I was looking for the housing to be a lot poorer, the people to be a lot, I don't know, less sophisticated. And so I was happy to see that they were living in levels that were much higher than I had expected. I saw so many people working. I didn't see people unemployed. It didn't seem like anybody was unemployed. They didn't have an unemployment system to pay people, so everybody had to work. So I was impressed that everybody worked. If they didn't have a job to go to, they created a job. And so I thought creativity was a very important thing that I saw. They made things from their imagination, and they used products that were local that we wouldn't think would be used in that way. And so I left Africa with a much higher opinion of the continent and its people.
The landscape and what your expectation as an American or someone from a so-called developed country might think of a country in Africa. And I'm blessed to have been there in 2003 and lived there for 9 weeks helping with a fishmonger women's organization. So I got to be embedded in the community. And I think, just like in America, there's all qualities of housing. There's shacks with no running water, no bathroom. We got those too here in the U.S. And then all the way up to the gated communities where black people live. Heartwarming image is the image of the children at the Senchi Ferry, the Senchi Ferry Library, who were being mentored by older children or young persons. Mustafa and his partner. It was a beautiful exchange between them and the children at the computers every day, learning how to read, learning their math.
Actually, this bracelet is one thing. And so we got this bracelet when we were in Ghana. Oh, where were we? Oh, what's the name of it? Senchi Ferry. And it was given to us by one of the local chiefs, I believe he was. And I wear this bracelet almost every single day. And even though the little charm has broken off, I continue to wear it because it's a reminder of my connection to my ancestors, a reminder of my connection to the land, a reminder that what I'm doing is for the generations coming after. It's not just for me, that there's connectivity, there's a through line. So I do think about that.
I don't even know. I mean, I know that there's so many black folks that are so bright and so, geniuses. And being able to actually experience that, Mustafa, being able to, he was like quoting the Quran like backwards, I think. How he was working with young people and helping them as far as building their capacity as well as their education, the software that existed there in the library.
And it was profound for me because to see that and to see how the chief, that elder in that community, his authority was, and it wasn't nothing funny or nothing, but it was just like a respect. It was like admiration to be, you see the kids had that admiration, that respect from, and that was one of them things where you say, okay, I wish we had that more of. We do have it, but where we could see it more in our community.
What lessons can we learn from our African brothers and sisters of Kwame tradition around bravery? And how is it something that identifies all of us, 1.4 billion across the diaspora? So tell us a little bit about the Akwamu story again. That way we can have one stream on it. And then also give us a sense of how we're all united around bravery and courage. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Now with the Akwamu's history, I'll talk about a young man called Asmeni. Now Asmeni was sent by his father, who was then the king, to Osu Castle to work with the whites. And so he worked there to work with them to earn their trust. They trusted him because he was open, he was truthful. And when he realized he has earned their trust, he then invited his people. He informed his uncle, Ansasa Traku, who was the king, to tell him that they trust him now and so they should come. So they went to the Osu Castle with the view of buying gun from them. Because they trusted Asmeni and his people, they gave them the gun. And at that time, the Akwamus fight with bows and arrows. So there is no way they could have defeated the whites with their weapons, knowing they use guns. So they bought the guns from them and they used the gun to defeat them. So they turned the whole place upside down, seizing all their keys to themselves. They sacked the whites from the Osu castle and they took in charge. Now when the whites realized they've been sacked, they were in awe. Like, how come these people without education do this? So they did all that they could. They couldn't get it back. So they came back to them to beg them to let them have the keys. And they told them, no, we won't let you have it. What we'll do is that you can change all keys, but we'll still have what we have as the trophy. And it will stay in Akwemu for generations to hear of this. As I'm talking to you now, Akwemu still have the keys. Now, when you look back to what they did, you realize that they acted bravery, not in a rush. They studied their environment. They got to know the people they were dealing with. And as individuals, that's how we have to approach situations. You have to approach situations based on how the situation is. And then you can tackle it and defeat it. Yeah.
The second was when we went down to the last bath, and to me that was wow. It was like just to think and to understand that to get to that the last bath, you need to walk maybe 500 miles, 1,000, because they were actually stealing humans, and some chiefs gave us up because they couldn't take care of us. They couldn't take care of the people that when they took over a tribe or they had a war or something, they couldn't take. So the best thing is here. I can't feed everybody, and I don't trust everybody to stay on my team, so I'm gonna just give you away.
But to see it and experience it, whether it was going into the slave castles, and that was my first time visiting the last bath. So that stood out to me as well, of not only the experience that you see in the dungeon and the prisons, but to see the experience of knowing that folks marched from the Amso River all the way to those castles after coming from Senegal. Not only the pain and suffering, but the tenacity, courage, and perseverance. Because I thought to myself, I barely can march a mile somewhere. Could you imagine going across countries, getting into what we know now as that kind of chamber of the transatlantic slave trade? Just the type of endurance, the type of power to withstand all those adversities and keep going, to be able to birth and create a pathway to me today. And it just gave me a stronger sense of purpose, of, you know, they say, ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I think I really felt it when I went to that river, and especially knowing in that river there's so much pain and suffering as people are being bathed and getting scraped with the pieces of bamboo. You just can't even imagine it. But then you look down and you see those glimpses of gold down in the river. You can't help to say, but maybe that was a little message that there was some hope for the future, for generations that people would never even see. For many, that might have been their last glimpse of seeing something in full daylight. They saw those little glimpses of hope in that shimmering gold.
I think the biggest thing for me was just the history, experiencing the history where it happened, as opposed to reading it in a book or hearing somebody talk about it. Going to the places, the prisons, the forts, to see where people were held for months in almost total darkness, hundreds of people in one room, no bathroom facilities like we would think of. You can imagine what that would be like.
If you could look at the University of Ghana did an archaeological dig in the cellar, and just to see that, like, and I was like, what that chalk marking for? And they said that was, and I was like, it was like, oh, we had to dig, and it was a foot, and where the original floor was, and we was like, the original floor. So if you know over years and let's say hundreds of years, let's say 400 years of them, the floor went up to like this, like that high, and they broke it when it come all the way down. But if you really want to know what it was excrement, blood and everything, bodies and all that. They say it was, they found in the floor that they just lived there, let that. I was like, whoa. And they got the markings on the wall to show it. And it was like, that's savagery, like to have people living in that.
You can imagine what that would be like, or I could then imagine what that was going to be like. And the numbers of people that were taken out of Africa and brought to the U.S. and the Caribbean were just phenomenal. And how many people died on the way? Only a third of the people got here. The rest died prior to leaving or on the way.
So, you know, to think that Nkrumah and W.E.B. Du Bois, you know, worked together there in Ghana to really help that country be our first place of liberty, shall we say, is beautiful.
First president of a independent Ghana in 1957, and not only did Nkrumah help in terms of the freedom of Ghana, but his vision was one in terms of helping in terms of the freedom of all people of African descent. And one of his greatest contributions was to help black people all over the world see that we were African people, which is a very, very important concept.
To me, it was sad. And the reason it was sad because the developed world wanted control. And they still use their control, which is monetary gain or by pure violence. And he was a great man. And to see him bring his country and everybody support him, and then to be deposed like how it was, you knew that came from somebody who was just on some terms with the devil. He was lock and step with the devil because the guy didn't do anything that was trying to raise his country up.
And the other thing was just the spirit of the people. You know, we travel a lot and we see people with this look on their face in this country like the end of the world is around the corner. But those brothers and sisters over there, I don't care if it was the peddler in the street, the brother with the three-piece suit, they all had that same look about them that they were at peace with where they were at.
One of the things I wish that we would have had was more time. 2 weeks is not enough time to really spend going through hundreds of years of history, right? We had a beautiful lecture with Dr. Ebenezer who gave us an opportunity to unpack some of that history, and our tour guides in these slave dungeons were super, super helpful in helping us walk through some of that history as well. But as a people who have been disconnected for so long, for so many hundreds of years, we really need more time to wrestle with these concepts.
You know, it's just going back to those community leaders and that sense of when you see something in your community that needs to be handled, you handle it. You know, they also had like nanas, which were like male leaders, and so the reverence you give to your nana is like, you know, again, it was those kind of connections for me that made me think of home. You know, because when my great-grandparents were living, you know, they were like the nanas. Like, if something happened, you went to them, and they figured it out, they mediated it, they celebrated it, whatever it was. And so I think, too, that sense of that connection still came over the ocean. And I think, you know, being in the environment I am now and, like, away from my family to some degree, I feel like as a community, we've kind of lost that. But you could really see it there. Like, in that community, like, everybody knew when we showed up, they knew we were coming, you know, they did this welcome for us.
Yeah,
it was that whole
was
sense of, like, yeah, like, your people care about you, and they're an ocean away, and they're still ready to welcome you.
What was the Akwamu experience like, meeting the king and seeing and learning about his leadership or Christenberg Castle? Because for me, I had never heard of a "we're not afraid and we did overcome something." That's the first time that I heard everything about slavery. If somebody took us, captured us, we might have lived, we might die. But to hear the king talk about in such concrete ways of a history, a culture, and a legacy of the Akwamus resisting slavery, no matter where they were in the world, no matter where they were taken, I think gave me just a different perspective. So I'm just curious, what was your experience in meeting the king, learning more about the Akwamu kingdom, going to his museum? Did it change your perspective, make you think of things differently, of what we've been taught?